All right, man, we back. Mercy Sports Talk in the building. I watched a little bit of the Clippers and Pistons game last night, and Pistons hanged Jermaine for a minute, and then we got out of hand. Shout out to Sayoko. Hopefully, I pronounced his name right. He should be starting, but I think they should keep him on the pinch count. All right, he real young, but he had a double last night, and that's good for his first start. So they moving him along. But yeah, Tom Gores. I think he live out there in L.A. And he was asked basically, and I linked the article in the free press in the description. What he considers starting over. He said definitely something they're gonna talk about right before the trade deadline. And that's something they need to be discussing right now. But let's talk a little bit about the Pistons rebuilding and the timeline on doing so. But make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell icon button, share the video. Appreciate the love, support. They should have been rebuilding. You know what I'm saying? Either they should have been all in on Dre or not by now. What I mean by that, sign him to a new contract, or they should have moved him in. They waited too late. They rolled the dice. And in my opinion, when they didn't go out there and add a Westbrook to this roster, to go with Drummond and Blake, when they wasn't willing to mortgage their future, I felt they should have moved on from both of them at that point in the summertime. You know what I'm saying? I felt that, either furthermore, they should have moved away from both of those guys last trade deadline. Well, you could have got a lot for Blake Griffin. You could have got more than what you're going to get. You really never get market value, on a trade in the NBA for a superstar or all-star. Down the line, you might look up and, you might win a trade, but when you look at it on paper, it don't never seem to be even. Rarely it does. But they should have traded last year. I could have told them this team, as constructed, it didn't have enough talent to compete in the East. You can't crowd on Blake. Andre never developed the low post game, and people saying, well, Andre's game is not for today. He would have dominated back in the day. No, he wouldn't have. If you can't put the ball in the hole, you're not going to dominate in the NBA. Or if you don't be a dominant defensively like Rodman or Ben Wallace or Dikembe Mutombo, he's not dominant in no area of the game except for rebounding. That's not good enough. You have to be dominant, rebounding, and playing defense or offensively. Shaquille O'Neal, let me put it to you, Shaquille O'Neal will rule over this NBA. Shaquille will probably average 35, 40, and 20. It's not that you don't have to go out there and shoot threes. You don't. You don't have to go out there and shoot threes. You know what I'm saying? All you got to do is put the ball in the hole the best way you know possible. That's drop step, shimmy hook, shimmy turnaround, power your way, however you got to do it. And Andre Drummond, he not dominant on either side of the ball. And that's the problem. But, with him starting over, they starting to see it. This is something I seen years ago. This team been needed to start over, but they've been trying to, keep it off. And I'm not mad at them because I understand bringing them to Detroit, this was the result. This was the result. You want to put a winner on the floor because when they was at the Palace, the owner got the parking, everything. It was a sweet deal. They moved down to the Little Caesars. He took a loss to bring the team back to Detroit. So that's why Tom Gores should be celebrated because he took L's to bring his team back to the city. And you really can't get mad at him. At the end of the day, he needed to put a winner on the floor to recoup some of that money he was losing to parking. Because I don't think he owned no parking down there. I could be wrong. But he don't own all of it for sure, like he did at the Palace. So I get it. He had to put a winner, but an experiment failed. But the experiment should have been cut off last year at the trade deadline. Blake was hot. You could have got something for Blake. Could have got something for Dre. But at this point, it's not the end of the world, though. It's not the end. You still can move Dre. Or if he walk, he walk. If Reggie walk, he walk. That's what? That's around almost $50 million in cap you losing. The only hard part with this team is this. As far as rebuilding it and trying to get more cap space. One thing about it is you won't bring back no assets if you let them walk. You just get salary. You don't get it first, late first, early first, lottery first, second. You get no assets, no young players, no nothing. You just let them walk. And then the second bad thing about it is with Blake Griffin, he don't have value. So you stuck with that contract until he comes back and shows something. And so you hoping second half of the year he shows something, you can move him in the summer. And you start over. You go back to the 90s Grant Hill Piston days. You hope to get a blue chipper like Grant Hill. And the good thing about for the Pistons, if they do decide to trade at the deadline and shut Blake down for the year and just say, hopefully he get healthy, I can trade him in the offseason or I can trade him early next year. You tank. You see what you got in Brown. You see what you got in Civi. You be bad. You try to get in the lottery. And it's a lot of good players coming out next year, man. I mean, LaMelo Ball looking really, really good over in Australia. I mean, James Wiseman. You know, it's so much talent coming out the next few years. So at the end of the day, I think their goal was, all right, if we don't go into 2020 and show some improvement, 6, 7 seed, we're gonna rebuild. And at this point, it's not the worst. It's not the worst thing. You got some dudes that's attached to Drummond. They don't know nothing about sports at all. You know, when Drummond had 2020, they post about it, they talk about it, but they few far in between. They don't have an impact on us, you know, actually progressing to be a championship level team or a playoff level team. Those are called hollow stats. You just do them every now and again, but they don't mean nothing because we still only got 12 wins. So how do you get a superstar in your city? You have to draft one. Because it's going to be hard to bring one to Detroit with the perception of Detroit. But when people get to Detroit, they love it. Ask the Bad Boys. Ask the Going to Work Pistons. A lot of people love it. People got this perception that Detroit is just this big metro area that's terrible. And like if you got NBA money, you'll never get close to the slums. In the Metro Detroit area, they do a great job of keeping, you know, the Detroit issues inside of Detroit and it doesn't roll over into Livonia or Grosse Pointe most of the time. So they do a good job, got great suburbs. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, at the end of the day, he right. It's time to rebuild. And going to a new decade is never a better time. So you get young talent, you try to do it the Thunder way, you try to do it the Oklahoma City way. You know what I'm saying? I mean, well, that's the Thunder. I'm thinking Seattle and OKC, like, because Durant was part of the Supersonics. You might end up like Philly. You might hit some, you might miss some. You know, you up in that top 5 area. Michael Carter Williams, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons had injuries, and Nerlens Noel didn't really pan out. But if you can come out there with a Ben Simmons and a Joel Embiid type of talent, then you good. But the rebuild should start with them getting a general manager that's respected. Forget Malik Rose and Stefanowski, whatever his dude name. Get you somebody that know what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Get you somebody that can identify talent, that got a track record for doing it, and let them come in and be the GM. You know, but it's time. I've been saying people hold on, and how can you hold on to players when you playing all this money and you got 12 wins? And 20-something with 23, 24 losses now. You know, when Andre have a bad game, they know where to be found. And that's a lot of the time. There's no fault of his. Well, it is fault of his, but there's no, you know, but at the end of the day, he just ain't developed. It's offensively or defensively. If he could be Ben Wallace with that rebounding, Ben Wallace defensively, then yeah, I mean, we got something here. We cooking. We cooking, coach, but we don't. It's time to move on from most of these dudes and just start over and get young talent in here. And when you identify young talent, you identify the character you want on this team, plug them in, all right? Let them play, but also you got to groom them. So you got to have a coach that can develop talent as well. Then you come back the next year, get another top talent. You know what I'm saying? You come back the next year, get another top talent. Then now you're starting to see some things. Now you fill it out with some veterans. You know what I'm saying? And that's how you rebuild. You know, people saying, oh, you can't, you know, people just saying you should take and be bad. Like that's the formula to rebuild. Man, that's the only formula when you a small and mid-market team in the NBA. You know, what Joe Dumars did with trading Chucky Atkins and them from Ben and all them trades and Rip and Stackhouse and all that, that was an anomaly. That was an anomaly. It's not going to happen too many times. How did the Spurs get from being like, you know, middle of the road good in the 90s to being great? You know, they tanked and got Tim Duncan. Boston really wouldn't have fell off in the 90s had Len Bias not, OD'd or whatever happened to him. How'd the Lakers come back? All right, via trade for Shaq, but, draft day for getting Kobe. That was due to draft, even though they traded Eddie Jones to Charlotte. You got to go through the draft. You got to go through the draft a lot of the times, man, especially you smaller mid-market team. Lakers, a little bit exception to that. That's just what you got to do in Boston. Obviously, it's one of the bigger market teams. So that's what you got to do. And that's something the Pistons ain't done since after the Bad Boys in the 90s with Grant. So that's what they got to do. And they got to hit on their draft picks. They got to be Durant, Westbrook, Harden type of picks, and Ibaka when you get a little bit better. They got to be those type of picks. You got to identify the guys that you need and how you want to play. But you don't have to play the way the game is played today. You have to build a team that can beat how the game is played today. You don't play the trend. You don't build your team to trend. You build your team to beat the trend in the NBA. That's the same thing in the NFL you do. If the trend is to throw 1,000, you throw for 5,000 yards and 80 touchdowns, you build a team that can stop the quarterback, get after the quarterback, and that can defend the pass. And that can run the ball and chew the time up. But hey, that's another conversation for another day. Probably have some more Lions talk. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, bell icon button, share the video. I dropped that article in the description for the free press. I always put my sources in the description for people that say, oh, the story fake or whatever it is. Just hit the drop down box. It's under article link or source link. Don't forget, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Reach out to the email if you have a business question, query, sponsorship, video request. And check out my other channel, Goodfellas Sports TV. Want to make a donation? Just share the video one time for the one time Motor City Sports Talk.